Alright guys, so we are still learning about two-step equations today, but I am also going to introduce some story problems to you guys so that we can set up the story problem and then solve to figure out our answer. Okay, so let's just use some basic two-step equations here. So remember, you always want to move the number that's adding or subtracting first, and it's on the same side as m, but it's not attached to the variable. Okay, so in this case, we want to move the minus 8, and remember, to move it, you have to do its inverse operation. So if we're subtracting 8, the opposite of subtracting 8 is to add 8 to both sides. So your minus 8 plus 8 cancel. You're left with 6m equals, and then 16 plus 8 gives us 24. Alright, now we just have a one-step equation, so to get m by itself, right now the 6 and the m are multiplying, so the opposite of multiplying is to divide. And when you divide on both sides, your 6's cancel, and 24 divided by 6 is 4. Alright, and then you can do like a mental check off to the side, so like 6 times 4 is 24, and then 24 minus 8 does give us 16, so I know I did it correctly. Alright, next one. So again, look on the side that's on the same side as the variable, and I want to move the number that is adding or subtracting, and it's not attached to the variable, so I want to move the 6. Right now this is a positive 6, or in other words, adding 6. So the opposite of adding 6 is to subtract it on both sides. And this is the thing that students have to be careful about, because when you do cross out your 6's, because that equals 0, a lot of students do bring down the 8x. However, you have to look at the operation before it, because if the operation before it is a subtraction sign, that subtraction sign is actually a negative sign now. So when you bring down the 8x, you also have to bring down that sign, because our 8x is a negative 8x and not a positive 8x. Okay? Then 22 minus 6 gives us 16. Alright, and then our last step to get x by itself. Right now, negative 8 and x are multiplying, so the opposite of multiplying is to divide. So remember to do it on both sides of your equal sign. So your negative 8's cancel, you're left with x equals, and then 16 divided by negative 8 is negative 2. Alright, next one down here. So same thing, look at the side that your variable is on, and you want to move the number that's adding or subtracting first. So in this case, we want to move the plus 3. So since it's adding 3, if we want to move it, the opposite of adding 3 is subtracting 3. And our result is going to be k divided by negative 3 equals negative 2 minus 3 is negative 5. And then if we want to get k by itself, right now k and negative 3 are dividing, so the opposite of dividing is to multiply. So I would multiply by negative 3 on both sides, and then negative 5 times negative 3 is a positive 15. Alright, and then this last one, so same thing, want to move the number that's on the same side as x, not attached to the x though, and it's going to be the number that's adding or subtracting. So if this is adding 3, the opposite of adding 3 is subtracting 3. So we're left with 1/3 x equals negative 5. And then if you guys remember, when we have a fractional coefficient, technically, yes, this is saying 1/3 times x, so the opposite of multiplying is to divide. So I could divide by 1/3 on both sides, but if you guys remember, we don't divide fractions because we have to do the keep, change, flip by changing multiplication or changing division to multiplication and then taking the reciprocal of the second fraction. So we are going to skip to the reciprocal part by multiplying by its reciprocal. So if I want to get rid of the fraction to move over here, I just have to multiply by its reciprocal. So remember, the reciprocal is when you just flip-flop your numbers. So the reciprocal of 1/3 is 3/1, and just make sure you do that on both sides. Okay. So the reason why we do that is because a number times its reciprocal is 1, so we're just left with 1x, or just x, equals, and then negative 5 times 3 over 1, in other words, just 3, will give us negative 15. Okay, so this is what we did on Monday, Tuesday, so hopefully that was just a review. And now we are going to move on to two-step equation word problems. Okay, so let's go ahead and read the first example. So it says, Melanie saves $20 every month in her savings account. So $20 every month. She withdrew $60 one time to go shopping. She now has $280 in her account. Write and solve an equation to determine how many months she has been saving. Okay. So the first thing that we are going to do is define the variable. So anytime it says define the variable, I need my variable to equal whatever I'm trying to find in the problem. So if you guys look at the question, we are trying to find out how many months she has been saving. So my variable in my equation is going to equal the number of months, because that's what x is representing. If we're trying to find out how many months, well, my variable is going to equal the number of months. Okay? Next thing is we can start writing the equation. So I always tell my students to look for the equal part first, because usually that's easiest for students to look for. So if you notice, it says $20 every month. She then withdrew $60, and she now has $280. So which one of those numbers is talking about our total? And hopefully you guys are saying the 280, because if she now has $280 in her account, that's her total. So that means that that's going to be our equal part. So 280 is going to be the equal part. Okay. Next, I tell my students to look for where the variable is going to go. So if our variable is talking about the number of months, which one of these numbers is talking about the number of months, since our variable has to be attached with it? Hopefully you guys said 20, right? Because it says $20 for every month, and if our x is talking about number of months, that means x is going to go with the 20. So it's going to be 20 times x. And that makes sense, right? If she saves $20 every month, we don't know how many months she's been saving, so that's why it's 20 times x. And then the last part that we have to worry about is this withdrew 60. So if you guys remember from the integer unit, when we withdraw money from our account, that means that we take out money. So if we take out money, is that going to be a positive 60 or a negative 60? If you said negative 60, that is correct. So she started with this, then she took out $60, and now she has $280. Okay? So that's it. So we set up our two-step equation, so now we can solve it. So remember, you always want to look on the side as x, and you want to move the number that's adding or subtracting first. So in this case, we want to move the 60. So if it's subtracting 60, the opposite of subtracting 60 is to add it. So we're going to add 60 to both sides. Your minus 60 plus 60 will cancel, because that equals 0. And we are left with 20x equals. And then 280 plus 60 is 340. And then our last step to get x by itself, right now the 20 and the x are multiplying, so the opposite of multiplying is to divide. So divide by 20, divide by 20, and 340 divided by 20 gives us 17. And since we are dealing with a word problem, we do need a label. So remember, if x was talking about the number of months, that means that our answer is also talking about the number of months. So she has saved within 17 months from that $280. Okay. And then our last step is to write your answer in a sentence. So you literally just have to say, she has saved the $280 in 17 months. And it's just a basic sentence, right? I told you guys what the 17 months was talking about. It was how much money she has saved in 17 months. Okay? Alright, so let's try one more. So a group of 4 people ate dinner at a restaurant. And as you guys notice, I like to underline the important stuff, okay? They divided the bill equally, and each person left a $2 tip. They each paid $14. So they want us to write and solve an equation to determine the amount of the total bill. Okay, so like I said before, the first thing that we need to do is define the variable. So defining the variable is when we have your variable equals whatever you're trying to solve. So in this case, we are trying to find the total bill. So x is going to equal total bill. Alright, next thing is we are going to write the equation and solve. So remember, always start with the equal part because the equal part is usually the easiest for students to figure out. So out of the numbers that I underlined here, we have 4 people, a $2 tip, and then the $14 that each of them paid. So out of those numbers, which one do you guys think is the total? If you said the 14, that is correct. So if they each paid $14, that's the total that all of them paid. So our equal part will be that 14. Then I like for students to look for where the variable is going to go. So if we are trying to figure out the total bill that was split between those 4 people, should the variable go with the 4 people or with the $2 tip? So it doesn't make sense to put it with the $2 tip because no matter what, they left $2 for each person. So we don't want to put the X here because the $2 tip, like I said, is just a flat rate fee and it was $2 no matter what. So the only other place I can go is with the 4 people. And they even helped you out here because they said that between those 4 people, they divided the total bill between those 4 people. So like up here, we had $20 for every month. So it's going to be $20 times X depending on the number of months that she saved. Down here, we are splitting it equally, which means that we are dividing. So our variable is going to be with the 4, but it's going to be X divided by 4 because the total bill divided by 4 plus the $2 tip that they leave for each person is going to equal $14 per person. Okay, so that's our equation. And again, just walking it through just to make sure that it makes sense can help you guys out as well. Okay, so first thing that we need to do is move the number that's adding or subtracting. So right now, since this is adding 2, the opposite of adding 2 is subtracting 2. Your plus 2 minus 2 will cancel because that equals 0. We're left with x over 4 equals 12. And then our last step to get x by itself is to multiply by that 4 on both sides, since the x and the 4 are dividing, and the opposite of dividing is to multiply. So then when you do that, you get an answer of $48, right? Because we do need a label, so it's going to be $48. So the total bill was $48. They split it by the 4 people, added $2 tip per person, so everybody paid $14. Okay. All right, and then the last step was just writing it in a sentence. So kind of like I already said, the total bill was $48 that was divided by the 4 people. Okay, so just something along those lines. All right. So that's it. That's your notes for today. So if you guys have any questions, just let me know.